Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SavvyCast. This is Jamie, and I'm so grateful to all of you who are joining today. I recently put a question box on my Instagram asking for recommendations for podcast guests. And my guest today, there were several requests for her. Her name is Tonya Prewett, and she is the mother of 3 daughters, one of whom, Madison Prewett, was a runner-up on the 2020 24th episode of The Bachelor. So there's lots of questions from readers and followers for Tonya Prewett, and I'm so thrilled to have her today as my honored guest. So without further ado, I would like to welcome to the SavvyCast, Tonya Prewett. Tonya, thank you so much for being on the SavvyCast today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Well, you were, and to all of you watching and listening, I just mentioned in the introduction that Tonya was requested by several people who answered the question box on my Instagram. Who would you like to see as a guest? So a lot of people want to hear from you. So I'm very grateful that you took the time. And I must say, when you turned on and I saw your audio, I actually thought that it was your daughter. Y'all look so much alike with Madison.
Thank you.
I mean, you're just as beautiful as can be.
Well, thank you.
A beautiful family. So eager to just ask some questions and learn more about all of you. But we're going to start with the icebreaker question that I ask everyone. And that is, what would you choose as your last meal?
This is really crazy and funny that my family just talked about this not too long ago. And one thing I don't know if you guys are familiar with 21 days of prayer, but our church does 21 days of prayer.
We're Highlands too. We're doing that.
Our whole family has had to, fast something and give something up. So crazy enough, I would probably say chips and queso.
Oh, yes.
I would probably say Mexican food, especially queso.
Yes. I'm right there with you. That's probably one of my favorites. So, well, tell us about, speaking of food, it made me think of, I know you're in Auburn and I'm an Auburn graduate. Love Auburn. And since I've been there, there are many more wonderful places to eat, but that just led me to tell about where you live and just your family. Just give everybody a little picture before we dive into some of the questions.
Okay. Yes, we live in Auburn. We are actually in the AU Club. It is growing, and we've just moved here recently, built a house here, and absolutely loving it. It's a wonderful neighborhood. And my husband, Chad, coaches basketball at Auburn University. I believe he's going on his 10th year there, and we absolutely love it. We're huge Auburn fans. We don't miss a game. Auburn basketball has been an incredible blessing in our lives, our marriage, our family, our friends, our extended family. It's just been a huge blessing. Chad came on board when Bruce Pearl came to Auburn. And so he's been a part of the program as long as Bruce has. And let's see, I have 3 amazing daughters. And most of you may be familiar with Madi, who was on The Bachelor, if you don't know her from Auburn. So Madison is 26.
Okay.
And then Mallory, our middle daughter, is 23. And then my youngest, Mary Michael, is 20.
Okay. All right. So y'all are empty nesters.
We are empty nesters, and I'm not loving it.
Oh my goodness. It's been hard.
It's been hard.
Tonya, are they does anyone, or do they all live in Auburn still, or?
Actually, Madi just recently got married. And
right.
He was living in Dallas. She got married, and she and her husband are now living in Waco, Texas. So he took a job with Harris Creek Church out in Texas.
Oh, okay.
Church out in Waco. And then my middle daughter, Mallory, graduated from Auburn University. She's still in Auburn. She's sort of in a transition stage where she's trying to decide where her next step is. She loves working for event companies and things like that. She also has a heart for missionary and orphans. So she's just trying to really decide, where is God leading her in this next phase of life. And then Mary Michael, crazy enough, she was at UAB in Birmingham, and in nursing program, and felt like God was calling her to medical missions. And
Wow.
so this semester, she is actually in Hawaii with YWAM doing an intensive medical missions program and study there.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Now, will she probably take that beyond, like, into a permanent career, or is this just sort of a stepping stone to probably being a nurse in a hospital or a traditional setting?
I think she's kind of taking it one step at a time.
Mhm.
She felt led to go there. And then she's like, ever since she's been there, it's like God has just really revealed some things to her. And so she's trying to decide, does this mean I go back to a nursing program, or
Yeah.
is this giving me the training to be able to go into medical missions? So I move directly into missions.
Mm,
So I think just a lot of questions. She'll be there 6 months, and then she's
wow.
in Hawaii for 3, and then they'll send her to another country to actually have hands-on.
Mhm.
And so it's just exciting. Well, we're just trusting God in all of it, as we have everything else with our girls for sure.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I have 3 girls as well, and one is still at Auburn. 2 are in Birmingham. One's married. One got engaged Saturday. So
Wow,
the wor-
congratulations.
thank you. So the world of girls is quite an exciting one, and being a girl mom is a unique gift. It is.
Yes.
It's wonderful. But lots of questions, and I think we'll just start with probably what most people might be most familiar with is Madison, and she was a runner-up on The Bachelor. Let's see, it was season 24, and that was what, in 2020?
Yes.
Okay.
2019, 2020.
Okay. Tonya, how did that happen? How did she become nominated and eventually selected for that? How does that work?
If I can give you just a little bit of background leading up to her even going on the show, I would love to do that.
Yes.
So Maddie ended up moving to Birmingham, took a job there. It was a great job, but the job ended up causing her to work at home a lot, which Maddie's so relational. That was a very hard season for her. The relationship that she was in ended, and I think she just found herself in a season of what's happening. Just
Mhm.
questioning, I thought things were going to go this way, but things are definitely not going this way. And I'm very lonely, and I'm in an apartment all day, every day, no interaction with people. And so I just remember her calling me one day, and she's in her garage in her car, and she called me and just very upset and crying. And she said, "Mom, God has forgotten me. I don't feel like God cares about me anymore." She said, "Everybody around me is getting what they want. Everybody has a boyfriend, or they're getting married. Everyone's having babies, or they're in the most successful part of their career. And I'm in a job where I'm not satisfied. I feel so forgotten and lonely." And I remember listening to Maddie as she shared this. I sat there for a little bit, and then I was like, "Okay, Maddie," I said, "I need to tell you, God has not forgotten you. God is preparing you. You're in a
Mm.
preparation season. He's preparing you for what's coming down the road. You just can't see it yet." And I said, "So what I need you to understand is you're going to write books one day. You're going to speak to young people and to women, and you're going to change lives for eternity." And I said, "Right now you're in a preparation season, and that's why you're feeling isolated and alone, because God's doing something in you you don't even realize." I said, "So I need you to get up, get out of your car, go into the house and start writing this book." And she's always listened to mom's advice, so
Wow.
she gets up, she goes inside and truly gets out her computer and just starts writing this book, not knowing what was coming. I would say probably a month later, she gets a call from producers, ABC Bachelor. And she calls me and she's like, "Mom, you're not going to believe this, but I just got the weirdest call." She was like, "Somebody applied me to The Bachelor, and they just called and want me to interview for their show." And she said I would never do it. And so I was like, well, being her praying mom, not something I would typically say. And I had honestly not even watched The Bachelor before then, but just in my spirit felt led to say to her, "We don't close the door until God does. And so we will pray about this until we hear from God. When he decides to close this door, we will walk away." And not knowing much about the show at the time when I said that. And anyway, but that's what we did. We just started praying, and we were like, "God, as long as you open doors, we'll walk through, close the door when you're ready to close it." So she got on the show. She did make it to the end, and she had an opportunity to share her faith and her purity with 10 million people who may never go into a church. And to us, that was God's way of saying there was a purpose in this that everybody may not understand, but I did a work and I will continue to do a work through it. So she came off the show. She got a lot of things thrown at her, a lot of good. I would say hundreds of thousands of comments that were sent to her and chat to me, and, you know, just how proud they were. And then she got a lot of really negative people that didn't think she should go on the show. People didn't think she should not have gone into fantasy suites, just a lot of opinions. But one message stood out to me above all others. It was a girl that sent a message to Madi, and she said, "Hey, Madi, I needed to tell you, I've never been to church. I'm not a Christian, but I watched you on The Bachelor, and I've recently decided to give my life to Christ." And I think that was powerful enough to us to say, even if it was just one, which it wasn't, we've heard numerous stories of how people have returned to church or returned to purity, you know, just from hearing her on the show. And so it just felt like God was in it, even though it didn't make sense.
Right. Well, I've watched, you know, snippets here and there, but I realize it is a big deal. I mean, people have watch parties. The young people love it. It's a big deal. I know that it can get very difficult between the girls. And did she, because of her convictions, did she get difficulty and persecution because of her stance and her outspoken Christianity, her faith?
You mean with the girls on the show or people since she came off?
No, the girls or anyone on the show. I mean, because she was obviously in an environment that would not be considered necessarily a Christian environment. Right. So to be sort of a lone sheep in that situation, did she have to pay a price for that?
That's a really good question. And I'm sure a lot of people wonder that. I cannot think of one girl on the show that had any problems with Madi. It was the biggest blessing. And even to this day, I mean, Madison just got married in October, and I would say at least half of the girls from the show were at her wedding.
Wow. That's amazing.
And for the most part, and as far as the girls on her season, very supportive, very loving, all of them.
Wonderful. Okay. So Madi just got married. How did she meet your new son-in-law? And how did that transpire? Did they know each other prior, or?
This is crazy. Okay. So I told you that I told Madi to go in and start writing a book. She starts writing her book, not knowing what was coming, not knowing the journey ahead. And then her coming off the show, she was contacted by several agents, and one that, you know, wanted her to write a book, publish a book. And so crazy enough, Madi already had this book that she had written most of it. And
is it it's made for this moment, standing firm with strength, grace, and courage?
That's it.
I'll be linking to all of these things that are linkable, how to reach, follow and reach and buy in the show notes. But I just wanted to point that out. It's published for purchase.
Yes.
Okay. So when was that published? She was being contacted, but she was already working on the book. When did she publish the book?
So that was October 2021. Okay. So she has this book. So through her agent, and just crazy, the title of it and everything is based off of Esther 4:14, for such a time as this. And I actually led her book in a Bible study for college girls, and it's quite amazing. And I would tell all moms, all leaders of girls, if you can lead a small group or a Bible study, use this book. And it's not just because my daughter wrote it. I'm telling you, it is set up to help girls in every area that they deal with: identity, their value, their character, their courage, their ability to stand strong under pressure, preparation for the dating years, all the stuff. It is really, really good.
Oh, and it is set up to do within a study.
It is not set up to do in a study, but the way that we did it was the girls would read a chapter, and then we would discuss the chapter, and then we would give them questions from the chapter. But there has been a request for it to be turned into a study. So hopefully one day that will be, but you could still do it without the study.
Okay. Well, I love this because we're about to start our small groups. Are y'all Church of the Highlands?
We are.
Okay. Well, we are. And so anyone listening who might be wanting to lead young women, they could just take it and turn it into a study and a discussion type, because it sounds like Madi is very aware of things that young girls are facing, especially having been on, the show and so forth. So she wrote that, and then she still had not met her husband.
So she wrote this book, and she actually was in all of the PR stuff after the book. She was doing book launches and different things going on, podcasts. And so she went on a podcast with this guy it's at Watermark Church, actually, in Dallas. And so he was interviewing her, and I guess he just sent something, and he was like, Madi, oh my goodness. He said, I've got this single friend that you need to go on a blind date with. And she was like, that's so sweet. I appreciate it, but I don't do blind dates, but thank you. And he's like, okay. And then they can't continue with the podcast, and he's asking these questions. So he gets to the end of it, and he's like, okay, I can't get away from the fact that you need to go out with my friend. I'm not going to drop this. Yeah. He's like very persistent. She gets off the podcast. A few months later, our family goes to the Bahamas for a basketball tournament, and she gets a call, and it's from the guy that he was referring to, Grant Trout. And he's like, hey, Madi. He's super nervous. He's like, hey, Madi, this is Grant Trout, and I would love to take you on a date when you get back to Dallas. She was like, sure. Okay, I'll go. And gets back to Dallas, and he takes her on a date. They go out to dinner. Then they just ride around and just listen to some of, honestly, her favorite music, Justin Bieber, and just being silly, and then getting to know each other. And their conversation, she said, I don't even think we ate our meal because our conversation was so deep. It lasted like 3 hours. Then we rode around and just laughed and had a good time. I was at an event that night back in Auburn, and I don't know, I was listening to a speaker, and I turned, had a moment of prayer, and I said, God, if this is the guy from Madi that she's on a date with, let her know quickly. That was my only prayer. I left the event, got home. I texted Madi, and I said, tell me how the date went. She said, Mom, I just met my husband.
Wow.
I said,
that's amazing.
Wow. And
that's amazing.
They dated for 8 months and then got married, and it was a fairy tale wedding, beautiful in every way. The Spirit of the Lord was so strong, and you could just sense God was such a part of this.
Were they married in Auburn?
They were married in Dallas at his parents' home.
Okay. So they had an 8-month engagement, got married. Now they live in Waco.
They moved to Waco.
And so what are they doing? What do they do?
She's traveling and speaking all over to universities and churches and girls groups. And then Grant took a job with Harris Creek in Waco, Texas. And so he is the young adult pastor there.
That is wonderful.
And then he's also speaking, and I feel like he's going to probably end up writing a book as well. So.
Oh my goodness.
He also reaches out to NBA players and speaks to them, has a heart for that. But they're just impacting like crazy. There's no doubt the connections and the dots that were connected to get those two where they are today. It's a beautiful story, and you have to read Madi's book to learn more about it.
I know, I'm going to get it for sure. And well, I want you to touch upon just a few things that I want you. There's something, the 41 letters. Can you just tell us what the significance of those are? 41 letters.
Yes, there is nothing I enjoy telling more than this story. When we found out Madi was definitely going on the show, we were getting ready to pack for her to go, I think I just got hit by the realization that she's about to be gone, and I'll have no communication with her. And Madi and I talk every day. We have a very close relationship. And so that was going to be very hard for me as a mom. And obviously we didn't know, would she be there one day? Would she be there 2 months, 10 weeks, whatever. And so I had this idea just to start writing letters, and didn't really know what it looked like. It's just every day I would sit down and start writing these letters, and whatever I felt led for that day to write is what I would put in there. And so kept writing. And I got to letter number 41, and something said stop. And I thought, that's strange. Why 41? That's a weird number to stop at. But I got a ribbon, and I sealed up the letters. And then the day we took her to the airport, I handed her this stack of letters. And I said, baby, I won't be able to talk to you while you're there, but this is my way of talking to you. And I said, obviously, I don't know how long you're there, but you have a letter for as many days as I felt led to write. And so she takes this stack of letters. We dropped her off at the airport on September the 16th. She came home back to Auburn for hometowns October the 26th, exactly 41 days later. So from the day we dropped her off to the day we would see her again, she had a letter for every day. There's no way I could have known that. I didn't know she would even make it past the first day. And I remember her coming home and saying, Mom, there were days I wanted to walk away and leave the show. And I would pull out your letter and it would say, you're in this race for a reason. Don't stop running. And I reminded her of being on the track team in high school and the races she would run, and just really encouraged her, stay in the race. It's not over, stay in the race. I had no idea what was going on because I wrote that months before. And she would say, Mom, your letter was exactly what I needed to stay the course. And had I not stayed the course, I would not have been able to share my faith on national television. And so it was just really neat. It's one of those things that's a God thing that you're like, okay, this can't be explained except God did it.
Right. Absolutely. If you could go back and change one thing with your parenting, what would that be?
That's a good question. And no parent probably really wants to answer that, but I will say there's probably lots of things. There are. One comes to mind more than anything else is I think that as moms, we need to love our daughters for who they are and not for who we want them to be. And I say that, I'll tell you a story of what made me think of that. I think sometimes as moms, we can get caught up in wanting to live through our daughters or make our daughters fit into this certain group or mold. And I just remember a particular story where my youngest, Mary Michael, she could not wait to get to middle school because middle school meant she got to be on the middle school basketball team. And she had dreamed of being on the middle school basketball team for so long. And that was fine with me, except that I was a cheerleader. I always cheer. And then all of her little friends in her friend group were cheerleaders. And so for me, it was like, you can do basketball, but Mary, you're going to cheer and you're going to cheer. We're going to work on this and you're going to cheer, and I just really, really pushed and pushed, and she didn't want to disappoint me. So I just remember coming home every afternoon from school and she would go to the backyard and she'd do her little cartwheels and she'd fall on her face and she'd get back up and she'd do a cartwheel and she'd fall on her face. And she just kept doing this every day. She tried to do a toe touch and could barely get off the ground. And she never mastered the cartwheel or the toe touch, but she did try out because Mom wanted her to. And she did not make the squad. And all of her friends did. And they all went and celebrated afterwards, and she didn't get to. And I just remember in that moment thinking, what if Mary Michael's mind is thinking, if I could just get this cartwheel, if I could just make cheerleader, my mom would love me more, or my mom would be more proud of me. And that just breaks my heart because my love for her and the pride I have towards her has nothing to do with her being cheerleader or getting a cartwheel mastered. And I would never want her to feel that way. I do have to tell a little bit more of the story though. She did end up making the JV basketball team. She was the starting point guard. Their ending season was undefeated.
Wow.
She won the state championship and she was named MVP.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And so sometimes as moms, we think we've got it all figured out and she has to be in this group of friends, or mom's just not going to be happy if she's not in this group of friends, or mom's not going to be happy if she doesn't do the sport that I did. But let your daughter be who they are, not who you want them to be, and affirm them and encourage them in who they are. I have that regret. And if I could go back, I would change that. But I would like to encourage all moms watching. Love your daughter where she is and love your daughter and who she is.
Wow, that's very, very, very good. And it's interesting that you bring up the tryout scenario. I think that comes into play in many, many ways, perhaps in rush. Rush is one of the most difficult things. And for some of us, rush went exactly the way we wanted, but may not have for a daughter.
Right.
So they can tell perhaps not just sadness, but disappointment on our part for whatever it might be, because in a sense, even though we might not think we do. We don't necessarily live through, but we have that vested interest where we want things to happen the way they were for us or the way we think they would be the most happy or successful. So that is extremely wise advice. And that is a regret that I have as well, of maybe pushing something that wasn't what she really was, a particular daughter really was. But
Right.
because I do know everyone would like to know, especially those with daughters, what do you think the most important thing is that you can give your daughter in the formative years?
The first thing I'm going to say, and I'll probably, if we have time and answer more questions, you're going to hear this a lot from me because it's huge in who I am and how I've raised my daughters. I would say the most important things that you can give your daughters, number one, is prayer. Praying for them every single day, and then modeling the prayer so that they see that you pray, so they become a prayer person, a prayer warrior. In anything in life where my family, Chad and the basketball team making it to the Final Four, Madison publishing a book and speaking to crowds, Mallory mentoring this girl and helping her find a place of freedom, Mary Michael going to YWAM and living out an unbelievable life, and her testimony that she's sharing every single day, all as a result of prayer. And it's my prayers, but it's also their prayers. So one of the most important things you can give your daughter is prayer. But I would also say love through physical touch. I think that is missing a lot with mothers and daughters today. Physical touch increases self-esteem. It increases confidence. It lets your daughter know how loved she is. Just an embrace, it can make her stronger and healthier, and can also be effective in her other relationships. And so I think daughters who don't get that physical touch are lacking some things, and it does filter over into other relationships. So I would say love through physical touch. I'm always rubbing my daughter's hair. She's laying in my lap, or, rubbing her arm, putting my arms around her. I think physical touch is very important, and it's missing a lot in mother-daughter relationships. I would also say affirmation, not only speaking what you see, but speaking to their potential. For example, if I have one daughter who's not very clean and not good at keeping her place clean, if I notice for once that she's put her towel in the laundry basket, I'm going to affirm that quickly. And then also, maybe I don't see her do that, but I say in front of the other people, she's such a clean person. She starts thinking, I'm not really clean, but she thinks I am, so I'm going to start being clean. So I think just speaking into that potential so that it makes them want to do that, because they don't want to disappoint. And then the last thing, and I said this about all my girls, is teach them to dream. Teach them to dream really big, and to see things bigger than what they're capable of doing. I would say all three of my daughters, my husband, and myself are all in that right now. We're all dreaming for things that are so big, only God can do it, and He's doing it. And so those are my most important things I think you can give a daughter.
Well, that's, I love those. And I did have several people ask, and I know there's so many, but just briefly, what boundaries did y'all place on the girls in social media and dating? Like at what ages? Like how firm were you, and what were your guidelines for them?
So we started really giving our girls, I guess we allowed them to have phones, I believe, when they were probably the middle of the 6th grade, because they started playing sports. And then just schedules with people being in different places, doing different things. We would need to be in contact with them. I didn't really love giving them a phone that early, just because they have access to things, but for safety, we did. But we limited apps. We limited what they were able to have access to. And so like internet and Snapchat and Instagram and all the things. And this wasn't to be weird or to cause them to miss out on anything. It was really to protect them in areas of comparison and jealousy and seeing things they don't need to see. And so we did that probably till they were 15 or 16. I'm not positive on the age exactly. And then gave them a little bit more freedom there. One thing that I think that Chad and I were so good at is we always trusted our girls. And we would remind them often of things like, I know you're going to protect your integrity. You're going to protect your reputation. You're going to protect your name. And so I trust you. And I think a lot of times when you extend a lot of trust, they don't want to disappoint you. And so we never really had a lot of, I'm finding out now as they're older and telling me things that there were some things that were probably we weren't aware of. So it's very hard. I think you can shut down those apps, but at the same time, that's a tough one. That's a
Yeah.
tough one because they can see other kids' phones or they can find ways around it.
Right.
But monitoring it, taking their phones up until they're 16, take their phones up at night when it's time to go to bed.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they're just alone in a room with access to anything they want,
Mm-hmm.
or even hateful chats between other people that they're not resting because of all of this. I will say this, our girls were so involved in school, sports, church, community outreach. There wasn't a lot of time to be on the phone or on the social media.
Right.
But I will say social media is a big concern, especially for girls in the area of comparison.
Right. I know are getting toward the end, but I do have a question that I do think is very important for you to speak to. And you might even be speaking on behalf of, maybe how Madi has led her life. But there was a question: what one piece of advice would you give to young girls about godly dating, or about dating in general, relationships?
I think the best piece of advice that I can give is to tell your daughter to value herself. If she values herself, he will value her. And I think girls knowing their identity, their worth, and their value before going into dating is everything. Like they also need to be so secure in their standards and their convictions. Can't be led by feelings. If they don't pre-decide before getting into a relationship what I will and will not do, chances are they're going to make a mistake and regret it for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so we say, pre-decide, these are my values, these are my standards, this is who I am, I will not cross this line. And then we encouraged our girls to stay in community groups, not to get alone in a situation where you would compromise with a guy, which would lead to regrets. And I think that was important. Our girls were always with guys and girls at the same time. So it was never like they just went on dates with a guy and was out all night and we didn't know where they were. And we opened our house a lot for them to be able to come and hang at our house. Or if they went somewhere, we took them. Of course, when they got older, they were on their own. They could do their own stuff. And then another thing is to stay accountable. Find a mentor, a parent, a friend, somebody that's going to keep you accountable, and then just stay accountable. But I think the best piece of advice is value yourself. Know how amazing and incredible you are. And anybody that gets you or your time better understand your value.
I love that. Well, before we sign off, is there anything you feel on your heart that you would like to share, either with other parents or with young girls? Anything that you feel led to share?
I mentor and work with a lot of college students who live with a lot of regret, who deal with a lot of anxiety, unnecessary anxiety, depression. These are things that are just really heavy on me right now. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to be able to share this. And thank you for allowing me to. Mm-hmm. I see the hurt and the defeat and the pain in young girls that's not necessary. Mm-hmm. And I want to encourage moms to step up. And through some of the things that I've been saying, more prayer for your daughter, more prayer in private for your daughter, being present more for your daughter. Nothing should cause you to be so busy that you can't be there for your daughter. More affirmation, speaking to their potential, loving them for who they are, not who you want them to be. And making sure that their daughter knows they're available 24/7 and they come first. I've had Madi came home from a small group. I'll say this real quick. I know we're coming to the end, but I'll never forget. She was 16. She came home from a small group, ran to my bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed and crying uncontrollably, said, "Mom, I don't ever want to take you for granted. I'm so sorry if I have taken you for granted." And I said, "Baby, you haven't. What's wrong?" And she said, "I just left a small group." And she said, "We went around the circle and every girl in the room said, I would give anything to have a relationship with my mom. I would give anything for my mom to hug me and for my mom to tell me she's proud of me." And she said, Mom, you do those things every single day. And I don't ever want to take you for granted. And that stood out to me. My other two girls have said similar things, come home from something and they're like, I can't believe girls don't have relationships with their moms. And so I would say, and for daughters, make time for your moms. Like there's not many relationships you'll have in life with a greater bond than a mother and a daughter. And make time for each other, love each other, affirm each other, and love each other for how you are. We're all struggling and none of us are perfect. And I will say for my husband and me, we are not perfect parents, but we are praying parents. And we believe in the power of prayer, and prayer can change things. And I've seen it happen. I wish I had more time because I'd love to tell you another story, but maybe it'll be for another podcast.
Well, you are obviously, I mean, you are such an example of a praying mother, a godly mother. And I know this is going to affect so many women, young and old, on so many different levels. And I would love to have you back. I would love to have you back and bring Madi and talk about some of the specifics in her book. So I would love to learn more about that. But Tonya, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
I just so appreciate it. And I'll be circling back and hopefully have you on again.
But thank you so much for having me. This was amazing.
Thank you, Tonya. And you have a fabulous rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.